Right.
Are you
we started? Are we on?
I
don't know.
Yeah, we're on.
All right. Okay. We're on. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first ever pilot live stream. We've got Paul Longhurst here for technical because I'm absolutely hopeless with all this. We've even got Paul Longhurst's son here tonight behind the scenes to try and supervise us all. And we also have our studio audience, which is made up of just local hobbyists, which we'll introduce you to.
Oh, we're going to do that now?
Should we?
Yeah, go on.
I'm racing ahead.
No, they're on screen. Look,
okay. Right, so we
Famous
have
floor.
Mr. Dan Luscombe, if you want to say hi. Oh, that's it.
Hi,
We've got Flange, who's not really hobbyist, but she's here anyway.
I'm just a real right, Flange, what are you doing here?
Yeah, she's just the real boss.
Hello.
We have Chris No Tank.
That hurts every time you say it.
Okay,
Hi,
and we have Mr. David Wong.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
okay.
David.
Right, and of course we have Jeremy Gay.
We do.
Oh, hi.
Jeremy.
Oh, hi, Jeremy. All right.
Right,
Yeah. So, right. Well,
you got your list.
We made it. We just about made it. With how many minutes to go?
3 or 4.
3 or 4 minutes to go with technical. We're hoping that things are working properly. Who knows? I mean, we're hoping. So if we can have any comments in the feedback, we had problems with a microphone earlier on, trying to balance it out between both the audience and that. But any comments, please let us know. It's all experimental. We expect there'll be some mistakes. We've had cameras cutting out already and all sorts, but we're trying to make it a little bit of a fun show, nothing too heavy. That's why we've got our victims, as I call them, our hobbyists out there as well to join in with the fun. So, Paul, what's on tonight then? What we're talking about
first
tonight?
of all, thank you. 42 people have joined already with 2 minutes.
That's amazing.
We'll do an intro in a moment, go through and say hello to a few people. So we're going to talk about coral freaks, how much was raised, and also, more importantly, where the money's going to go locally. So the difference between this and previous events is the money's going to be spent in Essex rather than going to a central pot. So we can actually say where that money's going to go to. We're going to talk about the Hawaiian ban. And we're going to do new news. So Jeremy's got some new news. So we're going to go through that. We've got some Ask the Audience. So we're going to have a chat with them about a few things. And of course, as usual, put your comments in, any questions you've got for Jeremy, Paul, or even to the audience. If you want to ask the audience, then put that in the comments and we'll come back to that. But first of all, which is customary, we're going to say hello to a few people. So first in the house was Push Button. So good evening to you.
Hi, Paul.
How are you, Johnny boy? I know John's only with us for half an hour, and then he's got a family Zoom call. So
thank you so much, John, for joining.
Good evening to Reef 216. Good evening, welcome, and good evening, TY. Hope you're well.
I think that means Thai.
Yes,
I think it means
Thai.
Yeah,
Thai
fair.
Hi, Ty.
Yeah.
Got the East Coast Reefer. Good evening to you. Said Johnny boy. Hi, Liam. How you doing? Well. Reef 216. We say hello to AAC. Chris is there. Hiya, Chris. For the second time, just going down. And Angela's in the chat as well. Hi, Angela, for the second time. Just excuse me, don't take much. The Spiritual Reefer. Good evening to you.
I've been naturally watching a little bit of his stuff. Actually.
Oh, have you?
Very, very good. Yeah.
And we've got Sophie. Hi, Sophie. Sophie was with us earlier on doing the tests, the sound and everything else. Good evening to you, techers. Drippy, hi, Drippy.
Right, Drippy.
You good?
Oh, what's that you say? Evening bookworms. I hope everyone's well. Paul, your homemade fish trap is working a treat. Excellent. Fantastic.
So what's that about then?
Basically, Drippy asked us for, well, he didn't ask us. He walked in and he saw a beautiful Mitratus butterfly, which has been relatively well behaved up until now, which is now devastating all of his SPS corals.
Oh, dear.
So that's coming back to AAC, but I'm actually quite pleased about it because it was a spectacular fish. Yeah.
So what, are you going to put it in one of your displays?
I'm just going to put it in somebody else's SPS aquarium.
And you can come back and buy some more SPS. There's a method in your madness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's move on. Hi, Jarrett. Good evening to you. Martin Pace. Good evening. Reef and Teeth. Hiya.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi,
Works here.
Rob. Good evening to you. We've got John.
Oh, John.
Hi,
Hi,
John. Let's come back to you. We'll talk about Ultramarine.
Yeah, we'll talk about Ultramarine,
later on.
yeah.
Really good magazine. Hi, Stephen
Oh,
Ray.
hello, Steve. He's on there. Yeah.
And Coral Head. Good evening to you. We're up to 60 people, so thank you. Brilliant.
Wow.
Fantastic.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you all for joining. Norfolk Reefer, good evening to you.
Hiya.
And then we've got Ryan Gilmore. Hi, Ryan. And as we're going down,
Laura.
We've got Laura.
Hello, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Good evening, Laura.
Hiya, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
Coalhead, good evening to you. Chuckle to rarely fishing.
That's
Good
an
evening.
interesting
It
name.
certainly
Yeah.
is.
Hi.
Hi, Dan.
Hi,
Good
Dan.
evening to you. Mr. J. Hope
Hello,
you're doing well, sir.
Jay. How you doing, pal? Join the Jaffa Cake giveaway.
Absolutely.
We do a bit on Jaffa.
All essentials. Good evening.
Hiya, how you feel? Hope you're well. The music rooms, good evening to you. Hi, Adam. Hope you're well. Hiya, Tom. I'm assuming that's Tom, Reefers Network. Good evening to you.
Hi, Tom.
Good evening, Chris. Successful Reef Aquariums. Good evening. The list is going on. This is brilliant. More in the chat, the better. Although I can't guarantee I'll keep up. Ryan Rancid. Oh, King Rancid, should I say?
Rancid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your name's confused there. And then we've got Ryan. Good evening to you. Where are we now? We're going down to Aqua. Oh, I missed that one.
Aqua Girl.
Aqua.
Oh, Aqua Green.
Grey.
Aqua Green. Okay. Hi,
Hi,
Aqua.
David.
Let's do reads.
Yeah.
No, not very well.
No, we can't
Stan,
read.
don't say anything about my reading. Bruce the Shark is in the house. And there we go. We have finished the hellos. So that's it. So thank you very much for everyone. Right, what are we covering now?
Well, should we talk a little bit about our the hobby audience? So the actual the idea of this, which is not actually so much my idea, it's more Paul's idea. I wanted to do streams from here, but I just don't have the technical ability, which is why Paul's alongside me to give me a little bit of confidence and what have you. But the idea being that we try and bring in some local hobbyists. We're not sure whether we're going to do weekly, whether we're going to do monthly. That depends on how people find it. If people love it, maybe we'll do more. We're not really sure, are we?
We'll see. Maybe monthly.
Yeah, we might do a monthly one. Just see what people think of it. But the idea is to bring in some local hobbyists as well. We thought into I don't think anyone's really done a reefing stream before with a live audience, have we?
I think the only one who might have done it was Aaron's Aquarium. But that was years ago when I think he might have had one or two people in the background.
Yeah,
but I don't think any of them were on the screen like this.
Yeah. So I think maybe we'll talk about we'll go through the hobby we've got with us a little bit more and more.
Yeah, do that. Yeah. Let's switch over
So
to you now on camera.
Dan, if we could because I don't know if I'm looking at the left or to the right, but we'll start with Dan. Are you there, Dan? Hello, are you alive? Hello. Let's see about Dan. So Dan, do you want to sort of tell people about your tank and what you've got and what's your buzz, your coral buzz, and what have you?
Keeping a reef tank on and off since 2007. I left hobby temporarily in 2011 and rejoined off the back of a Facebook advert in 2018. I just wandered into the shop and got hooked again, and I've been keeping them since. I've upgraded from a nano up to a 5 foot. And at the moment, I'm in love with my shoal of ghost cardinals, which are displaying sporting behaviour.
That's right. You were saying the other day, weren't you, that they were
Stunning fish,
spawning and whatever, which is good. Mouth brooders, aren't they? Those.
And, at the moment, just keeping my tank alive along with my family. My horde of kids who are always testing me on my fish keeping skills.
I think is that something we might want to bring up, Dan. How many times have your children managed to nuke your tank for you?
Just a couple.
Just a couple of times. Yeah. Okay.
100% nuked it though. It's
Right. So and then next we've got Flange has obviously got all of AAC or the people within it to supervise. So. She sees the hobby, but not quite completely involved as such, although she's been with me, obviously, 30-something years, so she's seen all of the hobby in her lifetime.
That's enough.
Yeah, that's enough. But moving on, Chris No Tank, or 350 Chris, as he's known on Ultimate Reef. I don't know if any of you out there are on Ultimate Reef, but 350 Chris has had a thread running for how many years on Ultimate Reef?
It's probably 12 years all told for 3 different tanks.
Yeah, 3 different tanks, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no tank at the minute. It's currently a police outline on the wall at home for where the tank might go if I decide I miss it enough.
Yeah.
So I'm missing changing rower pots. I'm missing changing DI resin. So if anyone needs me to come and change it, I'll come and do it. But I'm enjoying not having to worry about every sneeze killing everything. So it's touch and go. But we get 1,000 likes on the live stream, I'll buy a tank.
Oh,
I was just about to say, how long do you think before you'll get back into the hobby?
I know what I want it to look like. So the outline's taped up. I've got a vision of what I want it to be.
So that's soon, by the sounds of it.
I've got all the equipment. I've got 10 lights in the garage. I've got a massive skimmer in the garage. So I've got no excuse. I just haven't got glass. So,
is that a euphemism? I've got a massive skimmer.
Yeah, I'll show you later.
Right, and moving on to David Wong, who's been a customer of AAC, about a couple of 3 years, maybe 4 years or so.
More than that.
Is it really? I see. I'll never get bored of you.
My wife took the kids to the Christmas thing, and I went on Google and found a marine store near me, and that's how I discovered this shop. Yeah.
But you've had fish, since you were a little boy.
It's like a lot of people. My dad was really into fish keeping, freshwater, and I never really touched marine. And I think five years ago, we went on holiday, and then my wife says, "Yeah, you can get a tank," and that's how it got.
Yeah. Now she hates you for it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now
Everyone hates me. Yeah. So I've got a 6-foot tank, and there's SPS in it mostly. Yeah. So. And
I'm just going to mention actually, because if you want to look Dave up, he has an Instagram account, and he's known as Gem Tang Killer. Why is that, Dave? Why are you known as Gem Tang Killer by chance?
It's not a loaded question, is it?
Because I bought some suicidal gem tang, and they decided to kill themselves.
All right. Okay. They killed themselves.
Yeah.
You didn't help them along at all.
No.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
I've got 2 very healthy ones now, so they're all good.
That has been your thing, though, isn't it? You do love surgeon fishing in general, isn't it? That's your real sort of thing in it.
Because it's like you start with fish, and then you get hooked on the corals.
Yeah.
And then you realise you've got too many fish, and it doesn't really work with the corals.
That's right.
Because of all the chemistry.
Yeah. I have to say, actually, David, very often he buys all of my favourite fish in store, and then he generally returns them after 6 months when he's grown them out a bit, and I give him a packet of frozen food back for him. It's a fair deal after all that, don't you? Yeah,
absolutely.
Have you got Polly's owner Tang, David?
Yes.
You got one of Paul's Polly's owner? I thought he'd make you have one of them. If you're into
actually, I got 2. I got one which jumped, so I've got another one.
They can't all jump.
Yeah. They all jump out of his tanks.
They love jumping.
I don't have a lid. That's the problem.
So I've got Dan Thomas, Krusty the Clownfish. Chris, when are you coming around to change my rower foss? Now, he's got a big old tank.
No, I promised to do it, so I will, before Christmas.
Okay, you heard it here. He'll be round before Christmas, Dan. And then we got Rob saying, I've still got some of 350 Chris's corals waiting for his new tank.
Yeah, it's my very, very favouriteest LPS. He's
I'll have to do a deal with Rob and just nick them off of him, and I'll give Chris back some old mushrooms or something like that. Yeah.
And some frozen.
Yeah, and a packet of frozen.
Absolutely, a standard issue.
Yeah.
55 people watching, only 18 likes. Push it now, guys. And go.
Yeah, please.
And then we got a comment there. Flange, I feel your pain.
Thank you. Who was that?
That was Jay
Yasai. Jay Yasai. Yeah. Right. So, I think next maybe we'll move on to the freaks and the money. Yeah. So obviously those of you that visited Coral Freaks recently, which I'm pleased to say went very, very well. we raised a lot of money, which I think we did. If you think the amount of hours that we were there, which wasn't very many, we had around about retail value about £3,000 worth of prizes, which is amazing support from all of the industry. It was phenomenal, wasn't it?
It was brilliant. Yeah. It's really
and we actually got £3,000 or so back for the goods in raffle money. And of course the fee. So every ticket that was sold, there was £5 off of every ticket, which I think was about how many tickets, Ange? Was that roughly 120, 30?
I think it was.
110 official tickets, but a lot of the trade as well, I think, put a bit of money in the pot without taking tickets out, which was rather nice. So yeah, £1,000, and we're pleased to say that we had a meeting this week, Paul, didn't we?
We picked up the two ladies from Mind. This is West Essex rather than Central Mind, talking through where we can spend the money, how they can help spend that money. And should I go on?
Yeah, carry on.
So basically, we was looking and saying, right, okay, what's close to home? So we was thinking around teenagers, looking at primary schools, and also potentially families. So as we was talking it through, we was asking them where's the greatest need. There's a lot of need regardless of the age and the category, and families or individuals. So we actually decided to families. So families that maybe have had a crisis, they may have had a bereavement or something has happened and they need some help. So what everyone who's raised that money or contributed to it is 70 sessions of counselling.
Yeah, I think precisely it was 68 points, something like that, or whatever they said. But whatever it takes to get to that 70. And I think there was an example given to me this week in the meeting about a family in Harlow. There was some bereavement and what have you, and that was where it was going to a bereaved. And the counselling's there is also for a lot of the teenagers as well out there that are struggling as well. So the counselling sessions are vital. And the good thing about Mind is that they work with a lot of private counsellors that discount their time. So a private session is usually about sort of £50-60, and Mind buy them in blocks at about 20 quid-ish or something, wasn't it?
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
20,
So yeah, that's where all your raffle money's going. It's going to, as I say, there should be 68 sessions. An average sort of number of sessions for usually is around about sort of 8 to 10 sessions per family. So you can see the impact that you're going to have on people locally. So that was really, really special, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
Really, really pleased.
Yeah, I think it was really important. We discussed around raising the money locally and spending it locally.
Yeah.
Because with Love to Reef, we've raised a few £1,000, but you can't come back and say, well, actually, it's contributed to X.
Yeah.
Or it's contributed to Y, and it goes into the central pot, which is really important. But I think it's important to raise money locally. And also Mind in West Essex, they do get a small contribution from Mind, but they have to do most of the fundraising themselves. So it's really important that they really do struggle to raise money, and hence why I was really chuffed to be able to help them.
Within the meeting, we met a lady called Sophie, didn't we? And Sophie actually works up in Saffron Walden. She works up in sort of Saffron Walden with the movie recording stock. We might have some technical here, but we'll just see.
You sound still good. You sound still good.
Okay.
I can still see you, actually. It's good.
Okay, all right. So the lady we were talking to was Sophie, and she deals with Uttlesford district area, and that's where the army barracks are. And it may well be at a future Love to Reef that we work directly also with this woman, because she deals with a lot of returning soldiers that are obviously seeing a lot of traumatic things. So that would be that's also something that Paul might look at again. But just another little shout out actually to Jay's Real Reef, because Jay's Real Reef and Paul Longhurst, who inspired me, certainly were coral freaks to bring Mind into it. You know, I never gave it a second thought when Paul Jay first mentioned it to me, but it was I think it's an incredibly worthy cause, and I'm really glad to be part of it. I know you were too, Jeremy, weren't you? I mean, it was a massive thing for you as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was just a special day, Paul, and it's actually changed certain parts of, you know, my life in a way. Do you know what I mean? Moving forward, it was just a good community thing that I think that, you know, you did.
Actual fact, I've had fantastic feedback. Actually, everyone who's watching from Fan Theme particularly, and Trina Parsons. I'm sort of talking to them daily ever since that show. And even last night, Fan was mentioning to me what a great show it was. And in fact, I've inspired him to do a bit more travelling. He's off to Europe next week, as I am. You know, to go to the show that's over there. But I think I've got a feeling, you never know, we might have Fan back in the UK again for either a Love to Reef with Paul or myself. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it was really a really special day. And I mean, Jeremy will tell you, and Paul knows as well, I was struggling leading up to it with lots of anxiety issues myself. So I'm really pleased, and I'll just thank everybody out there that did attend the day. I'm sure next time round, it was a little bit worrying towards the end because there was quite a few tickets didn't go right to the last minute. But you said this is quite normal, isn't it?
You get at the beginning, you get quite a few people buying tickets, and it goes really quiet, and you think, oh my God, not going to be able to sell the tickets. And then you get a mad rush in the last week, because that's happened at Love to Reef and all three. So we managed to sell the tickets that we wanted to sell. And actually, I think the right number of people there as well. It wasn't overcrowded. It wasn't empty. There was a really good atmosphere. So I think the numbers are actually spot on. If you put another 50, 60 people in that hall, I think it could look quite crowded.
Yeah, it could have done actually. It was a little bit.
And that wasn't the aim, was it?
Yeah, I wanted it to be a sort of intimate event. It was a special ticket. I mean, as I said before, is that it was a finance ticket. It wasn't a ticket. If I'd have charged what it should have been, it would have been very different. But it was all about. There was never, just like Paul's never made a profit out of Love to Reef, and I never made a profit out of 2019's Coral Freaks, and so therefore I already knew that we wouldn't make a profit, and I wasn't looking to make a profit. If we can do these events and they improve the hobby and also people's mental health as well, just by socialising, that's what it was really all about. But yeah, I'm really pleased. It went really well.
Now, so someone in the comments said, where'd you get the like button? So if you're in live chat, press X, you come off a live chat, and then you find under the logo for AAC TV, you've got the likes, then you can press the button.
Yeah. Or afterwards, you can do it in the, because it will be hopefully uploaded, but if it works.
Yeah. No, it'll be fine. No, it will do. It'll automatically be on YouTube forever, Paul.
Yeah. So another part of the idea of this little stream tonight is with our audience, our reefing audiences, is that we're sort of socialising the idea that we get together and we've all had pizza tonight. And we mentioned earlier on about the Hawaiian ban, but we're actually not here to talk about fish. We just wondered how people felt about pineapple on pizza, because I ordered pineapple on pizza, and for some, you know, and it turns out actually there's three of us here that like it.
I think you got abused is the word.
I got abused for this, but in the comments, if people want to comment on Hawaiian pizza, how do they feel about pineapple on pizzas? Because we know that Chris, you liked it, Chris, didn't you?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, Dave, you're all right with pineapple on pizza? I'm all right with pineapple pizza.
No,
and
No,
Not really.
no, and Dan,
Pizza.
yeah, and Dan, it's definitely a no from you. Is that right? Yeah. So we actually would look. Here we go. Spiritual Reefer, pineapple for sure belongs on pizza. No, from Carl. Yeah. So we'll have a little tot.
Rank.
Yeah. Oh, rank. There we go.
The mushrooms, but
Good.
leave the rest.
Love it. Yeah. Rob's with pineapple pizza. He likes it. Pineapple for sure. Yeah. So look, most people in. Look,
Most people say
even
it.
Stephen May's on there, like 100% pineapple on pizza.
Johnny Boy's going. See you, John.
Yeah, look, just Davey, look, wrong on so many levels. Yeah. So there we go. So it wasn't about the Hawaii fish ban, which is nonsense, by the way. Maybe I'll just do a little.
Yeah, why don't you talk to that while I go for
Right.
some
So
comments.
just to make people aware, I know Jeremy studies this as well as I do, being trade. This Hawaiian thing is absolutely nonsense. Would you agree, Jeremy? Do you want to Do you want to say a little bit about this, Jeremy? Because I know you know. I mean, Biota just this week have released 300 yellow tangs into the sea like it's a necessity. To me, it's the biggest nonsense I've ever heard. Would you agree with that?
It's not Biota though, Paul. It's
It's not Biota.
Biota have said it's nothing to do with them. It is the Oceanic Institute of the
Hawaii.
Hawaii University, who've let them out. But so yeah, we got two big subjects there. First of all is the ban, and there are millions of yellow tangs just off West Hawaii. It's been fished for decades, and the numbers have never gone down, especially not from taking them for the aquarium trade. They're fish for food. They're kind of a special fish to the indigenous Hawaiians as well. So everyone loves yellow tangs, but the aquarium industry has not reduced any numbers. And there's decades of science, actual science, to prove that. So the ban came in and everyone's waving their hands, and, you know, environmental groups are saying they're overfished, they're this, they're that. They're not. They never were. And that's why I agree with you, Paul, that it's
really, really shocking, because we're in a world at the moment, this came up at Coral Freaks, where emotion seems to rule the day rather than science. And, you know, it used to be that, you know, people actually look at things at a scientific level to get some sort of basic understanding. But, you know, I don't think people realise as well, just so those people out there that are hobbyists realise, it's such a small area that you're allowed to fish anyway for the aquarium trade. It's ridiculously small. Yeah, and of course there are loads of no-take zones, as there should be no-take zones, because any sustainable fishery will always have no-take zones. But what was really alarming is, like you said, Jeremy, this is one of the most well-studied fisheries for the aquarium trade. In fact, there isn't another one that is as good. I think Fiji probably a close second, right? But when we're talking about the Philippines or Indonesia, where the majority of my animals arrive from, there is absolutely no records, hardly. I mean, very few. I mean, there's obviously there's export documents and there's import documents. We can see what's being moved, and I know TMC's provided lots and lots of figures, but it's just so shocking, isn't it, Jeremy? And now it's actually been overturned, the ban, I believe, and we're actually allowed to start fishing it, but there's still, the locals are still stopping it's a legal thing. We're actually allowed to legally collect now, aren't we? But
we're so close. We're about 95%. All the boxes have been ticked. All the documents have gone through. All the various governing bodies, both local and national, it's all been checked thoroughly, ticked. But there's still legal challenges every single step of the way. You know, we were meant to get the permits a month or two ago, and still nothing, because they just raise their hand and try and postpone it again at every meeting. Do you know what I mean? The Earth Justice guys. So really frustrated. And then we go on to this thing. We go on to this thing today that you mentioned with the 300 tank bred tangs being released. Well,
I'll worry about that. I'll worry about that, because of the disease issues and the pathogens and things like that might accrue in captivity, and then we're putting them back out in the wild. And also, we've all seen the yellow tangs, and some of I was one of the first to have captive bred yellow tangs in the UK. I think there was only another guy before me that did. And most of my first ones that I got were either slightly, that's true, Lee France, cod needs protecting more than yellow tangs. Absolutely, because bycatch for the food fishing industry is disgusting. I mean, I think it's £1 of prawns, you throw away £500 in weight of bycatch, which is disgusting. And we're talking about a fishery that ultimately would, if you was to catch a yellow tang, by the time you've caught that, housed that, put it in a polystyrene box, sent it halfway around the world, the amount of tax and money that's accrued through the whole chain, you know, it's so much. I mean, I don't eat fish. That's one of the reasons. I just can't. I'm laughing because David's laughing at me because he eats all of the fish, including yellow tangs if you could, right? But I agree there totally with Lee France that cod needs protecting more than yellow tangs. That's an absolute certainty there. Anyway, that was all a bit serious. It started off with Hawaiian pizza.
Yeah, but coming back to yellow tangs, do we think there'll be a time where they'll stop out? They won't be allowed to put more appeals in, because you could indefinitely just put, if they've got the money, which they probably have, they could just put one appeal after another.
The unfortunate thing is, Paul, is that a lot of the animal rights, whereas years ago animal rights groups were sort of run by sort of poorly dressed hippies, nowadays we're talking about people that have got multi-millions pounds worth of money behind them. And when also you look at the Hawaiian situation, you know, the rumours are obviously the tourist industry is massive in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And then what it is again, it's about emotion. You know, you go out snorkeling on your holiday in Hawaii, and then all of a sudden they see a diver next to them who's collecting a few fish, and the next minute that's like, oh my God, you know what's going on? Yet they landed on a coral runway, ate a prawn cocktail, burn a V8, and then they're worried about a few yellow tangs. It's just absolute nonsense. But so the long and short of that is then that the majority of people don't like pineapple on their Hawaiian pizza.
I think it's a myth.
I don't know. There's a lot,
I think
There was a lot of likes.
whites, yeah.
Oh, look, Ian Robbs is on here. Look, there we go. Look, there, that one there, Paulie. Look. You see now, Ian, he eats all my mates as well. Every Sunday I've seen him. He goes down to the pub and he gets all his seafood. But each to their
I'm
own,
partial
I
to
guess.
seafood as well.
Yeah. Oh, are you really?
Yeah, I am,
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
I've changed. Right,
Oh,
let's
wait a
go.
minute,
Hang on. We got
got
an
hands up over there. Go on,
Go on.
Dan.
Yeah, what's the difference between a wild yellow tang and a tang bred tang in terms of overall cost of producing a tang?
Ooh,
Oh, that's a good
good
one.
question.
Right. Well, that one is actually extremely controversial because when you think about it, the idea. So anything we do in captivity, even me growing coral frags here, is actually an environmental disaster compared to using natural seed to do these things. So it's far better to like forestry to coppice a forest. Yeah, sensibly rather than to try and manufacture a forest, if you know what I mean, as such, you know. So using the natural resources sensibly means that we're obviously not burning fossil fuels in order to grow corals in captivity or breed fish in captivity. I suppose as techniques get better, there are obviously like even with a seahorse, there are situations where you need to do it. So, for example, with seahorses now, it has to be captive. There's no, you know, it'd be very unlikely you'll ever see another wild seahorse that's in the trade. Although you will see wild seahorses being collected for the medicine trade, of course. But what's your thoughts on that, Jeremy?
On seahorses?
No, not seahorses. Just the idea that captive breeding of yellow tangs versus wild collection. Wild collection in a sustainable manner is far better for the environment, surely, than captive bred.
Unfortunately, every wild animal has to have a value, and it's when they don't have value that they're in real trouble. So when they've got value, people take the time and money to count and protect them and tell governments about them. And just like, you know, the other side of the world in the Philippines, etc., you know, if they can collect wild animals and get more money than eating them, smashing them to pieces with dynamite, building on them, polluting them, etc., it's actually better. And everyone then makes a living out of they're actually protecting them by collecting them, if you know what I mean. It sounds stupid, but they are, because they need them there next year and the year after that. So I'm all for it. And there's a lot of parallels in freshwater fish as well. Cardinal tetras in the Amazon rainforest. You buy the people a net, they catch cardinal tetras. They're a sustainable fish. They're there year in, year out in the flooded forest. They get an income from it instead of slashing the forest. So I'm all for it.
And me too. I mean, as I said, that it's so, yeah, unfortunately, like you said, you have to give a value to coral reefs as such, and they don't have much of one. Well, especially some of these far-flung island locations, like you mentioned in the Philippines, we could be like 2,000 miles away from like Manila or something like that. And, you know, they had a trade collecting like small marine fish from a very pristine reef. And then all of a sudden they've got no income, you know, compared. And those fish, they literally bottom out and they're not worth a penny. They have no reason to look after the reef, and then, like you said, they start dynamite fishing for food fish and that sort of thing, you know. So, you know, in agree. So
question. My observation of the hobby in the industry is that the industry doesn't have a voice or a strong enough voice. Now, whether that's because it's quite a small industry or whether it's not collective enough and it's quite fragmented. But from what you're both saying, it makes perfect sense. But how does that take it forward to actually tell two sides? Well, it feels like just one side. I'm only just thinking from my perspective, what I see as a hobbyist. It seems quite quiet on the industry side.
Well, it's funny because OATA and OFI and lots of other organisations around the world, unfortunately, a lot of hobbyists are not privy to what goes on behind the scenes. So, for example, recently there was a meeting that was held in Brisbane, Australia, where everyone from all around the world, from fisheries, from government people, from they all descended upon Brisbane for a discussion on putting the hobby fish, the marine fish, onto CITES, which could be an absolute disaster for the industry, quite honestly.
So why would that be a disaster?
Well, because if you think, I can't remember, Brian from TMC will know the exact figures, but I think it's about 1,500 to 1,800 species are within the trade. And, you know, if you had to start studying 1,800 species,
right,
yeah, to understand their full life cycle, yeah, that would be so. I mean, I know Italy tried doing it, and on day one, all people could keep was a tank-bred clownfish and a Caribbean wild blue tang. I mean, you know, to have two fish within the trade means the industry would completely collapse.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a lot of, you know, it's all very good sitting in your Western chair making these discussions, but you know, the people, the native people of these island locations that we do, they know when to collect and how to collect. And as soon as they start to see their resources started to run low, then that's it. That's how we found out about Banggai cardinals. I mean, that where fish are endemic to one region, that's where the issue could be.
Right.
So, for example, if you think, for example, Hawaii again, you know, the Caribbean red-tailed the Hawaiian red-tailed tamarin, yeah, is endemic to that only there. So there is a chance that you could cause problems, but therefore we know that, and it's unlikely they'll ever be overexploited because they're just simply not. You know, there's no take zones again where they're done. So, as I said, there are times where, you know, certain species you would question. Right, but generally, most of what we catch is a sort of over 1,500 to 1,800 species across the board. It's very rare when something's actually specifically targeted, fortunately, in our trade. I mean, with corals, that's different. At the moment, everyone's torch coral crazy, and I sometimes wonder how many torch corals we can see come out of the sea. But they seem to be very, very prolific in these mariculture fields, and you know, so far I've not really genuinely not seen too much negativity. You know, I suppose the one that sticks in my mind is the Banggai. I mean, what do you say about that, Jeremy? You know a bit about Sulawesi and the Banggai.
It's actually ended up a success story, Paul, and Indonesia was applauded for the work they've done on protecting them, because now they've come back down the list of endangerment. So the work, this is great, you know, in situ conservation, i.e., you know, empower the people in Indonesia to look after their own fish, like we were talking about. They've done that, and the numbers are massively increased now. There's also populations of Banggai, as you know, Paul, that were put there accidentally or inadvertently ages ago, which are also high in number of fish now. I think they're in the Lembeh Strait. Or maybe that's where they come from. But anyway, it's actually a success story with the Banggai. So America was looking at banning Banggais altogether recently, and they're totally wrong. They're dealing with out-of-date information on them, and Banggais have done really, really well. And you've got captive bred. So you've got captive and wild. It's brilliant.
So just a question. I mean, clownfish and Banggai are probably two of the easiest fish to breed, arguably. Yeah. Is there an argument that says that you should have tank bred only and not have wild clownfish or wild?
I think they mostly are now, aren't they, Paul?
Well, I mean, they mostly are, but one thing that we must always is sort of keeping, you know, a bit going back to Dan's question there from the audience as such. But basically, there are good and bad things about captive bred fish. And people very often think, oh, you know, if they're all captive bred, it'd be amazing. So first of all, there's an environmental cost to producing captive bred species, and it's better off that we give the value back to the local people. But there's also physical and genetic issues. So, for example, where I'm breeding the seahorses, they're already from very small localized populations, and usually, like, if you imagine like an estuary, imagine Southampton or that area, for example, you know, where there are seahorses within that area, they're often probably mostly all related in one way. The genetic pool is already small in the wild. Once you bring them into captivity, like I do, and now I'm breeding them, there will come a point, even in my strain, if you like, that I've got, where we might see some genetic malfunction as they start to. So captive bred's only good if you can inject wild bloodlines here and there.
So you need a constant flow.
You don't have to have a constant flow, but you need to bring in
every so
often. And if you only, for example, with clownfish, like the black storm, for example, one of the first I brought in those. When I first got those, a lot of those have flared gills, which one knows about clownfish. That's a very common thing with these designer breeds. The one that I've got in the main display, the first ever Boston Serum storm, got a very small tail, so it doesn't swim well. It's a bit like dog breeding. You know, it's nothing like a mongrel. Every now and then you need to bring in new bloodlines as such into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that ties back in with the Tangs, because your new friend who you bought these Skirples off, although he was a Tang breeder who you'd think would be like, leave him in the sea, he's like, the captive breeding Tang industry still needs wild blood.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. You can't, and it's the danger. The danger is that we do end up in a world whereby that we would not see any more wild fish or wild corals or whatever, is that we would, in theory, have some seriously deformed and species, without a doubt. You know, so. Anyway, so that was that.
So I just go through some comments.
Yeah, let's do some comments.
A few minutes behind. You'll notice on screen that there's a camera in front of my head. So that's to do with the camera. I don't think it affects the sound. So we're going to try and sort that out in a moment. But while we do that, we're just going to go through some of the comments. Have a question. Will we ever see captive bred yellow tangs that are as colourful as wild caught specimens?
Yeah. Yeah, it's back. There we go.
That's all right, Sam.
Yeah. Right. So Cadbury has actually, Ian, I've seen some of these grow out now, and actually they're pretty good. What I think Jeremy would agree with me on. I've definitely seen some super yellow captive bred tangs that after about 3 to 4 years is where they seem to develop this colour. Is that about right, Jeremy? 3 years? Would you say it's about 3 years, isn't it? But what I have seen is a little bit of shape change in them, and I've sometimes seen ventral fins missing on them. But I do believe we will see some just equally as good colour captive bred tangs for sure.
I think it's going to be diet related, but interestingly, the American chat today was that they think, or rather many of them think, that captive bred are more aggressive, Paul.
More aggressive, yeah, could be. Well, that might be again that small genetic pool. You know, if you're breeding from very few parents, if you think that, I mean, a yellow tang, I'm going to just throw some general figures, probably laying several thousand eggs, yeah, or whatever. So if you've only got a few pairs, and then within those pairs, you've got a particularly aggressive mum and dad that's going on there, then ultimately you will see through the gene pool slightly more aggressive tangs. And this is what I mean, you know, captive bred completely isn't necessarily the answer. You know, not in entirety. It's good to be able to do it, but I don't believe it's the complete answer.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to come back to Jaffa Cakes in a minute. That's a good intro into something else. What we got here? These are the same principles used for wildlife the world over. It has to be worth investing for locals and provide a living to their families.
Yep.
I'm going to go over the inbreeding one there. Yellow Tang captive looks compelling colour, not nice at all. Comes back to your point.
I mean, some of the early ones did feel. Some of the more later ones are not looking too bad now.
Yeah, I mean, the early ones, I couldn't believe it. They were for sale with head and lateral line erosion. I call it what you will, but I'm a fish person. That wasn't up, you know, and I think they've got better at that, and nutrition has helped, but. And yeah, I've heard. I mean, Jake Adams had some with fins missing and all sorts. Yeah.
Well, there's been some in the UK with fins missing. I hate that. So I think probably some of the worst fish I have actually seen at captive bred were the captive bred purple tangs. They were probably the worst.
Right.
Maybe talking to Dave actually, Paul. Have you bought captive bred tangs, Dave? You're a massive tang fan.
3 yellow tangs.
I know they're all captive bred.
Yeah, and the colour is fine.
Yeah, and
Because I-
what do you think that is? Is that just purely down to food? Because I bet when you bought them from me, they were probably not that colourful, I'm guessing.
No, they were not. They were very pale. But
Yeah.
I think once you feed them enough,
Yeah,
and they have got a nice stable environment, they're happy. It's like anything.
yeah,
So I didn't see any difference in terms of color. Maybe a tiny bit paler, but it's
Yeah.
still very yellow.
yeah. And are your ones quite aggressive, would you say, just by chance? Or any more?
They weren't, because there's 3 of them together. So I have a lot of different tangs as well. I usually have 3 gem tangs and 3 yellow. They don't really fight.
Yeah. And what would you say? So, I mean, obviously, I know what I recommend as food for tangs and things like that. But is there anything specific? What would you say are the key foods that that make the difference with tangs in general?
I think everybody says seaweed.
Yeah.
It's just my.
Do you use seaweed every day?
Yeah, I put a lot in.
Yeah.
That's why I water it.
That's why your corals are dead. Yeah, yeah. Right, and Chris, you had loads of tangs. You had one of the most stunning powder blue tangs I've ever seen. Where did that go? Who had that? Did I have it?
No, Dan Krusty's got that.
Oh, Krusty the Clown's got it.
Hopefully it's eating his Gonipora as well as mine.
Okay, good.
But yeah, no, and the sailfin as well was absolutely stunning. So it's just a variety, nicest mixture of every frozen that you had in your freezer,
Yeah.
and as much seaweed as I could.
Dry foods as well, pellets and flake.
Not really. I found that they just were really kind of dirty, so stopped feeding a lot of dry.
Yeah.
Stuck with frozen.
Yeah, obviously, I know that I've always been a big advocate of using a lot of pellet and dry foods purely because I know that's an instant nutrient burst to them. But I do know that within a lot of these foods, we will find traces of things we don't want to see on our ICP. But I think some of us are being driven by this a little bit hard. I mean, the diet of the fish is number one. And what about you, Dan? Are you keeping tangs? I don't know what you've got in your tank these
I
days.
did have a whitetail cold tang until my latest wipeout.
You had a wipeout
Last year.
last year. Right.
I don't have any tangs at the moment.
You don't have tanks,
I
no?
like 1 or 2, but then I think I'd need a bigger tank.
Yeah. So for you, I mean, you're at a 5x2 Reef Pro, aren't you? You're in
That's it,
your
yeah.
DD Reef Pro. And I know, Paul, you had tanks
so
in
I had a
yeah.
5-foot tank, the vampire tang, yellow tang, and regal tang, right from really small. And I only dosed no pox. That was the main export. When all 3 of them moved them on, the no pox I halved. So I had about 23 fish, of which 3 were tangs, and you could see the output from the tangs in a 5-foot, as you say. You've got to be really on.
I know emotionally,
nutrients.
Paul, it used to bother you though a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I bought a second-hand tank, and they came with it. So we travelled up to Derby, bought the whole tank down, didn't we, Sam? Stayed up in a Premier Inn on the Saturday night, went and saw the tank on the Sunday, bought 200 litres back with this 5-foot tank and all the fish. I wouldn't have probably bought those fish otherwise. And when they got to about 6 inches, 7 inches, I thought it was enough for me in the 7-foot tank. I was gutted to get rid of those fish.
My sailfin was pushing the luck by the time
Yeah.
it went. It was just
huge,
massive.
wasn't it?
Yeah. So I'd keep a yellow tank again, but I probably won't keep anything else unless I went big, as in 8 or 9 foot, because I just don't think my dream would be to get a circular tank, an acrylic one, and then you could put whatever you like in it and they could just swim round and round in circles. Whether I'll ever get to that, I doubt it, but that would be the dream tank.
I think the other thing with
Yeah.
tangs to keep them happy is I do have a lot of flow
Yes.
in my tank.
Yes.
And that's why I only have got a 6-foot tank, but I've got 8 power heads.
Yeah, you've got. I mean, that's a very, very important thing. Actually, I don't think people realise. So, an Achilles tang or a powder blue tang, if you look at the scale of the size of the fins to the mass of the fish, they're relatively small, and it's a bit like wrasse. Their wrasse are similar because they're only using those fins as rudders for the flow. They're not really got any big motion fins. So, certainly having a really strong circulation, I think, is vitally important, certainly for the anchor furries like the Achilles and the powder blues and things. Probably less so for the zebra soma, but you know, I think that's a fundamental thing, is high flow.
I've seen quite a few people say for when they've got Achilles, having really, you can't get strong enough flow
Yeah, that's right.
for
Yeah,
them and just absolutely pummel it.
yeah, well, they
And
literally
they love it.
dance
It's also
in
the
flow.
energy as well. So they have less aggression because they're constantly swimming, and also you have to feed them more because it then becomes a high energy fish, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's where I think the problem is.
When I used to introduce new tanks, I used to switch on all my power heads. to you 100%. Because there'll be so much flow, they'll kind of go, I need to swim. I can't be bothered to fight.
That's a fantastic idea, actually.
I've
never really considered that before. So the idea being, that's a good one, Jeremy. Yeah, right. So when you put new tangs in, what you're doing is, was that Jeremy?
Tomorrow, I'm going to write that tomorrow. So
I'm claiming that as well. Yeah, I'll come and write that in Reef Builders tomorrow, Jeremy.
It was sparring. As I was there thinking the other day.
David, we don't want to make this epic.
Idea that came to you.
No, that's a top tip, that is, David.
Yeah, top tip. Yeah, fantastic. That go down as a top tip for sure.
Brilliant. We just go. So yes, there's a square around me, Drippy, and yes, I think someone is a sniper is around, and we don't want to mess around with the camera, just in case. If someone's trying to tell me something, it's probably Jill.
Now you know how Donald Trump feels.
The sniper. I like it.
Dear. Right, we've got some other comments. I've seen them colour up when starting being fed more variety. I can't tell the difference between mine, I suppose, in terms of tank bred and also wild. And that's Rob's got what 13-foot tank, lots of different tangs as well, so probably a good environment, lots of decent flow. Yellow tangs look washed out. Right, let's go down. Same with dogs too, like the example said, before aggression passed down generations can try and break the mold like humans, but still have a natural aggression.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great discussion, enjoying it. Thank you, Mark. It's just a Tang thing. My tank bred angelfish are just complete glorious.
It's interesting, actually. Let's stop there a minute.
Yeah.
Because the tank bred angelfish, so the tangs, we've seen some wishy-washy tangs. I think they produce them in such huge numbers that they don't cull properly. And it's very much similar to seahorses. If you produce something in any huge number, unfortunately, you have to be pretty strict with your culling and remove them. Now, when they're breeding high-priced angelfish, so like Drippy he's got a beautiful captive bred regal angel. I know that I know comes from Barley Aquarish. Yeah, I believe. Is that right, Jeremy? Barley Aquarish, which is the breeders over there. And they're responsible for breeding quite a few now, aren't they? Is it also the bandit angel, I believe, they've had a go at as well? And Conspic is Pomerlabs, isn't it? Conspiculatus is the Pomerlabs. See, all of these angelfish are an awful lot of money. And I think the higher up the chain you go with money, the more strict they are with culling. I think that's where I think.
Well, they can see the dollars, can't they, associated with fish, which makes sense because that's their living and food on the table.
But for me, in terms of captive bred fish, angelfish are without a doubt the most complete. If you would see a fully grown captive bred angelfish, you would absolutely not know the difference, is what I've seen so far. Maybe with a conspics a little bit in the face. But generally, most of the captive bred angelfish are much, much higher quality.
Yeah. And then you've got a question there, which I think answers, do you find the Tang aggression seems to lower with more heavily fed fish?
Yes.
Yeah, agree with that, David.
Nodding their heads on that, which makes sense what we said earlier.
Space for mates and food. And if you give them the flow and food, there's less to fight.
2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right, let's just go down through some of the comments and then we'll come to Jaffa Cakes. Oh, we've got a question there. Has Jeremy got a reef tank?
Yeah, it's over there. What is it? Red Sea Max Nano G2 XL, I think it's called. Yeah.
Like the 120, the latest one, isn't it?
But I'm living my life through my clients' tanks at the moment. He spends them. I tell him what to buy. He spends the money, and I get to enjoy them. So that works for me.
Fair enough. Absolutely. John was saying there about aeration. Also, tangs need oxygen.
Right. Certainly need that high oxygen level.
Yeah.
Especially Guttatus.
Yeah. And Polyzona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good technique in freshwater predator tanks. High flow limits aggression. They go Dijon just announced captured bandits.
I saw that today, and I was just
that, John. Yeah.
I'll be hopefully seeing them next week, I think, or maybe the week after. I'm hoping to see the bandits at Dijon next week, hopefully.
Yeah. So, and then the behaviour, unfortunately, comments gone. The behaviour, unfortunately, is exactly the same as the wild ones.
Yeah, they still eat corals. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, so I'm now going to come back up to Jaffa Cakes.
Right, why is that? I can't think why.
So whilst I'm finding the comment,
Mhm.
do you want to link Jaffa Cakes into the weekend?
So this weekend it is the AAC birthday. 17 years ago, I set off on this journey. I didn't really know whether at the time whether it was going to work out because I was still cab driving at the time. So we're it's now 17 years in, 13 years to the public.
Wow.
And this Saturday, what we do every birthday event is give out those free discount cards that we have for livestock. So it's the weekend's chance to get a free card, basically.
And what does the free card mean?
Free card means that whenever they come in, they get 10% off of their fish, their livestock, and anything they're buying live that's not on a deal already done. And generally, people really like it, and we usually get overrun on the Saturdays. It's a little bit less busy on the Sundays usually if someone prefers a quieter visit. But certainly this is the weekend for people to come and get their discount card and their Jaffa Cakes. And tonight we've got a special announcement. Someone already knows. Because did we know that they do cola bottle flavoured Jaffa Cakes? And I've still not even had one yet.
Oh,
No.
cola bottle.
So we-
unboxing video. Go on.
Yeah, so what should we do an unboxing video live? Let's do an unboxing
And what we
video.
do,
live.
we'll
One
give
second.
it to the
That's it.
audience
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
them
they
to,
got to taste
for
it.
them to have.
Right, so these are the special edition.
Not
It's a
just
bit,
any
it's a
old
bit
one.
like the Deltec Black Skimmers. Yeah. 1 second. Let's have a. Right, I'm going to pass them around and we can find out what we think of a cola flavoured Jaffa Cake. Let's get this. It's all fine. There we go. That's it. Pass them along.
Yeah, then.
Have you taken one?
No.
No,
I suppose so.
Go on,
Oh,
Paul
yeah.
and Flange.
being a good girl.
Yeah, you're not having one.
Oh, well,
Okay.
no,
No,
Sam,
Sam, you're going to try one? Here we go. Oh, look, they're slippery.
Well, I can smell them. They
Yeah.
smell
Well, you can
like
smell
that.
the
Yeah,
sniff
you
test
can
is
smell-
they
Right, so-
smell of Coke,
So you
Coca-Cola, that is.
smell of Coke. Hold on.
Just to clarify.
Hold on a minute. Yeah, that's it.
Right, so that's ruined a good cola bottle. That.
Yeah, no, they're bearable.
So what's the
They
take?
smell nice.
What do you think, Paul?
They're all right.
You're not
I
selling it.
prefer the cherry ones.
Oh dear.
Sorry, Tesco didn't have cherry.
Yeah, and messed up there, unfortunately.
So what's the verdict? Is it a thumbs up from everyone?
No, I stick with the raspberry.
Raspberry.
David?
Okay.
They thought it was all right.
Dan?
I'll stay with the orange, to be honest.
Yeah, stick to the originals.
The original.
He's going to stay old school. That's
Yeah.
it.
And Ange?
Didn't have one.
Oh,
Good girl.
you just sniffed it.
Yeah, I can smell
Just
it.
sniff the Coke Jaffa
Sniff
Cake.
no taste, okay? We're moving swiftly on.
Yeah. So yeah, AAC birthday this weekend starts at 10. We're doing 25% in store on fish
Oh,
and corals.
Corals.
so is that any coral?
Any coral. We're not when there's no like buy free, get one free, all that.
Which
kind
is
of-
a good offer.
yeah, the idea
this
being
is
if someone's
simple.
only got £20 in their pocket or something like that, they can come buy a coral if they want to. You
Yeah.
know, so that's the idea.
David's
So.
upset because he's going to be busy this week.
Oh, well, that means you don't get your discount card.
Oh,
Lucky
If
for me.
you have to pay for it. You have to pay for it. So
Yeah.
Chris, are you going to buy some more coals and put them in Rob's tank?
Yeah, if he's got enough room.
So Rob, I'm sure he has.
I'm
got
sure
enough
Rob's
room.
got
He has
enough
some
room.
Need some more and more LPS.
Rob,
Yeah.
let me know, Rob, what you need.
What you want, Rob, and we'll sort it out.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Right. Shall we move on to some news?
Yes, I think we're gonna. First of all, I think we should talk about Jeremy has an announcement.
Yes.
He has
Jeremy.
a big announcement, Jeremy. Don't you,
Um,
Jeremy?
It's not that big. I think you've over-egged it.
Oh no, I think it's pretty big.
Okay. So the long and the short of it is I'm going back to I'm leaving Reef Builders at the end of
Oh.
this month.
That is a
Oh.
I don't know that. I didn't know that.
2 years, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
so I've done 2 years, and as a lot of you know, I took it over when Jake passed away, and I was only meant to do a day a week, and I was doing lots of other things, and so I've been full time on there for 2 years, and it's been amazing, and I've learnt loads. But I need to get back to what I started because I've been self-employed for 5 years, and I started my company called Fish Keeping News, and that's what I do. I'm a news writer, and I love writing about aquatics, aquariums, freshwater, and marine, and I love writing about the trade, and I love this trade, and that's why I'm in Oata with Paul. So I'm going back to my own website. I'm going to relaunch it, Fish Keeping News, which is going to be freshwater, and I'm going to do an offshoot of that called Reef Keeping News, and that is going to be my version, the British version of everything that affects us, just like we've been talking about tonight, about stores, about events, about fish, corals. But because you guys all know we're slightly different in the UK, we've got slightly different restrictions on corals to everyone else. We've got a slightly different supply chain to everyone else. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to Reef Keeping News and Fish Keeping News. And if you've got news, great. The few people I've spoken to already about it have been really supportive. So Paul at AAC's been supportive, D&D, Exodus, TMC, BC UK, and they're only the people I've contacted. So the response from everyone. Sorry,
Red Sea, they're there as well.
Yeah, I think Steve's away. I texted him today actually, but he's supportive of it. He's very supportive of me anyway. So so I'm going to get back to doing my own thing and doing Reef Keeping News and Fish Keeping News.
Do you think you might include a little bit more? I know me and you've spoken in the past, a bit like tonight. I wanted to include hobbyists because they're what makes this, all of this. At the end of the day, there's no job for me or you about the hobbyists, is there? So do you think you might include a little bit more and involve the hobbyists a little bit more? Maybe a few tank visits and things like that?
Yeah, and like we said earlier, that event that you had, Paul, it was quite special in lots of ways, and you brought in the community side of it, and even things like podcasts. You know, I'd be on a podcast every night if I could, just because it's just chatting with your mates about reef keeping, you know, and I think that's really cool. So yeah, I'm going to get, you know, way back into visiting more stores, visiting more shows, more podcasts. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna sit there and watch myself while I edit videos all day long. I'm not into that. I will do videos and I will have a YouTube channel, but this is going to be about community, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think Paul, when we've spoke about if people like this, what we're doing tonight, I think the whole point of this is that we will bring in more hobbyists to it as well, and hopefully it'll become more noisy, more drunken, more Hawaiian pizzas. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I might be allowed to vape then as well.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, Jeremy, have you got the website on the screen that we can have a look at, or if you can send the link over, and then we can change the description, because obviously this goes on to Paul's YouTube channel, and then we can put the link in the description, and if people go back on playback, then they can find it.
Yeah, you can have a look at it now. Actually, it's dead easy. www.reefkeepingnews.com, and I've got this event on there.
Cool.
Oh, lovely. Okay, I'll have a look at that then.
Brilliant.
Smashing.
Reef Keeping.
So that was your big news, and I don't think you knew, Paul, did you?
I did not know. Jeremy's kept that. That is brand. That's news that I didn't know. I know most things about Jeremy, like what colour his underpants are and all sorts. So I did not know he was leaving Reef Builders, which is sort of. I understand why you're moving on, Jeremy. I should imagine that took quite a lot of a decision, that didn't it? It was quite a big decision for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, a massive decision. I mean, it's a massive privilege to do Reef Builders.
You linked. Well, I know that Jake had wrote to you before he died.
Yeah,
and told you about how he wanted you to do this, didn't it? The thing, yeah.
Yeah, I've got the WhatsApp from him. Him and Ryan, the co-owner, they had plans for me to be the editor anyway, regardless of Jake passing away. It turned out he was starting a family, so that's why they kind of lined me up to do it. I started off as British editor, then European editor, then weekend editor, then something else, and then obviously the whole world turned upside down. I went from doing just writing away on Friday and doing all the cool stuff about the British scene on an American site to doing American stuff and international stuff every day, and I've been doing that kind of nearly 7 days a week for the past 2 years, really. So it's been amazing, you know. I mean, the stuff that the contacts I've made in things like the yellow tangs and everything is amazing. But I need to get back to what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? And that's fun too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't think many people realise, Jeremy, sort of the impact that you've had across the trade generally. So, for example, a member of staff recently, he's kept all sorts of fish and marine fish and all sorts, yeah. But he's now into reptiles. And the other day he was looking up online something that, and he, of course, he knows who you are, knows you well. And he was online the other day looking up something about a chameleon or something. I don't know what he was looking at. And then at the bottom, after reading a whole entire article, it was by Jeremy Gay. So you also do reptiles too, didn't you, as well?
Yeah, I've done pets as well. I used to be the editor of a pet magazine as well called Pet Product Marketing. So I've written about dogs, cats, small furries, birds. But yeah, I've written thousands of articles. So yeah. Time to do something myself.
Well, I'm sure it'll be a success, and like I know that AACs will be definitely signing up for sponsorship for that, as I'm sure other stores and I certainly would know that the trade will definitely be out there supporting you as well. So that'd be fantastic. As we do John Clipperton, who's obviously
John.
Yeah, which I know you and him since the AAC thing a bit. You've sort of spent a time together at every AAC that you've been to, haven't you now? So yeah, it'd be good. Yeah, it's good to see the UK growing a little bit stronger in the hobby, I think, out on the press wise. So yeah. Okie doke.
So we've other news, Jeremy, because I know I saw. So you sent the link to the website through to me, and there was a fantastic video on there. I think there was sharks.
Oh, yeah.
And then they grouped together
to that the other Sunday.
Yeah, to chase after Moorish idols. Was it Moorish idols?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. And
tell me you watched it. Paul Hughes, tell me you watched it.
Well, I actually haven't seen it on the actual documentary. I saw it on a Facebook video that someone shared, and oh my God, that made me feel even worse about Moorish idols because obviously they're the size I specifically asked for the truck for my, that may be a little bit bigger than I asked for. But of course, they were teenagers. And of course, they're the ones that actually settle quite well in captivity, the teenagers. Yeah, oh, wow, that was shocking, wasn't it? So it starts off as like 1,000, then it ends up as a few hundred, and then it ends up with like 6 left to repopulate a reef. Yeah, and the sharks. I mean, I can't remember what species of shark, but the oceanic white tips, weren't they?
Not sure.
No, they were grey reef sharks.
They were grey reef sharks, right? Wow, yeah.
There was as many sharks as there was Moorish idols, and they were picking them off for fun. I mean, there was no comparison, was there? You've got an athlete in the shark versus the ornate, very ornamental looking Moorish idol out in deep water. I mean, it was just carnage, wasn't it? Mouth sized as well.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're a fish geek, Jeremy, for something I don't know, and I love my fish, but so why is a Moorish idol called a Moorish idol? Do you know?
No,
nor do I. Moors, obviously North Africa. It refers to the Moorish people, which is in the North African region, which I know that. And maybe it was just something that goes back to sort of ancient times or something like that. But be interested to find out why a Moorish idol's called Moorish idol. Who named it?
I was going to say they were described a long time ago. I think it's Xanthus cornuta, isn't it?
Xanthus cornutus. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I bet they were described a very long time ago, and I bet that common name is not very PC either. So I'd say that's an old name. I think you're right.
Yeah, and of course, the only member of their family. There is no other Xanthus species. Is that right?
Yeah, monotypic. That's called when you just have one. Yeah. So it was amazing, wasn't it? But I think it was a mistake. They said it's the only population of Moorish idols that do it on the planet that leave the reef, and I think it was a mistake. Because
that's the same mistake as saying that we're losing all the corals just down to global warming. That's another load of fable that us marine fish keepers have to suffer every time there's something mentioned about a coral reef. But no mention of El Nino, no mention of nutrient deficiency or anything like that.
I think Chris wants
to go on. Rob's told you it's because sharks find them Moorish.
Sure. Oh, is that right?
All of that.
Yeah. The sharks find them Moorish. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, should we go on to the next one? You've probably all seen this today. World's biggest coral found in the Solomon Islands.
Yeah.
34 meters by 32 meters. That's 100 foot square. I think it's 15 feet high, 300 years old in the Solomons. Species I found out today, Pavona clavus.
Wow.
World's biggest coral is a Pavona.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And if they, I presume they've done what Jamie does, and that is they take core samples from them, and they can tell by the counting the rings like you can in a tree. Is that how they do it?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. But that's a big coral.
I'll tell you, let's see what the oldest coral. Right, let's try a little quiz here. This will be interesting. So Dave, what's the oldest coral you've had? 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You hope.
No, seriously, what's the oldest coral? What's the longest time you think you've had? What species has done the best for you, for starters?
Montipora.
Yeah.
You can't kill it.
Montipora, because you can't kill it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
have to be pretty good at killing stuff to kill Montipora.
Yeah. And now, what would you say? About 4 or 5 years old, or
3-4 years.
3-4 years? What about you, Chris? What species did you have that did particularly well for you in captivity? That you, I know you used to bring a lot of frags into us, but what would you say?
I had a leather that I could trace back about 25 years.
25-year-old leather toadstool.
But chalice and LPS are my favourites. So getting a chalice from a little frag into a big old colony.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there is a little bit of controversy between me and Chris and chalices, because
There's no controversy.
he names them, and I'll pretend that it was mine.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, I'll let him do that. Yeah.
I
In fact, we got two out.
draft them and you put the price up.
Yeah, we got two
He names
actually.
them, yeah.
Chris's idea.
Reflation.
Yeah. We got 2 this weekend actually. Alien melons. I came up with that name.
Did you? I think Chris claims that, doesn't he?
Yeah. It's a watermelon graft with an alien on.
Ah, I've seen the one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the ones
Very
that
nice.
I found out works really well.
Yeah.
Spin your brain.
And Dan, what would you say is your favourite species, but what would be the one that you seem to never kill?
Duncan's.
Duncan Samia,
Yeah. Good choice.
Gorgonian.
and the Gorgon. It's interesting because not many new hobbyists realise, but Duncan Samia axifugia was such a rare coral because we never had any Australian corals up until, what was it, 10, 15 years ago, Jeremy? Something like that, wasn't it? And Duncan's, the only person I knew had a Duncan's coral was Julian Sprung. Somehow he managed to get one a long, long time ago. But I used to dream about that species, and now, of course, it's just took for granted. But interestingly, in Holland, you can't have them, so they're farming them. So there's a difference in the EU laws over there. And when I visited De Jong last time,
we saw it.
you saw it, didn't you?
Yeah, they had trays upon trays of Duncans.
And you said you couldn't believe that they were doing it. Yeah,
absolutely. So why have you got so many Duncans? And they said at the time that it was illegal to import. Yeah.
So just, often we feel restricted in the UK, but the EU's got its own situation as well. So
Paul, what's the oldest coral you have?
Oh, that'd be, I would say probably Acropora muricata. I've got, that might be about, it must be about 18 years old, but there's also the lime, what I refer to as the lime in the sky as well.
Sort of picture that.
That one's about 18 to 20 years. I'm just trying to think. There might be, I've probably got species older than that, but they sort of get pushed to the wayside.
I've seen all those ones down the back of the tanks next door, and then you bring them out every so often to have a look at them.
Yeah, well,
Fox in there, haven't you?
I've got a fox coral, a mentophilia in there that I've had for a long time. Perhaps not as long as perhaps some of those two, but there are corals all up and down the UK that I know were mine that now so, for example, what I call the AAC branching green hammer, which can be bicoloured, I would have said that's around about 25 years old as well. And in actual fact, that seems to be extremely camera button extremely hardy to brown jelly infection and stuff like that. So I would have said that there's quite a few species I have that are about 20, 25 years ago. Paul still has a brown, now that is true. So, for example, that coral's a species of porites that I've had that for about 20, 25 years, funny enough. It's just a brown lump, right? And it just sits in the corner, it hasn't grown much. It's some type of porites or something like that. But I keep it because there were some girls up in Edinburgh University that were really interested in these really hardy coral species. And rather than trying to spawn corals in captivity, what they were doing was taking little fragments and then rolling them in trays up and down like this sort of motion, and trying to create them into little balls, because they realised on beaches where they'd been, they'd found species like Montiporon porites creeping up and down with a tidal stream. So they were looking at the idea that if you could do this on mass production, it was rather than spawning corals, you could actually throw them onto reefs as like a seed. Like throwing seeds into the seas, in so many words. So some of these species I keep are of no interest to the hobby whatsoever, because they're relatively unattractive, but I've got a soft spot for them. Yeah. Like brown little birds as well. I quite like warblers. There you go.
So I've got a few corals still from my first tank, which is 10 years ago. So I've got Duncan, the bubble coral. Do you remember the bubble coral I fragged and brought into you?
Yeah.
Also I've got Sunny D Zoas.
You know the branching bubble you've got?
Yeah.
Do you know where that? I know where that come from.
No, because you said it almost disappeared from
right.
the
So
UK,
the branching. So Paul's got, Jeremy, an amazing bubble coral, which is a branching bluish greeny one. And I know that when the Kent Muppets, which 350 Chris over here will know, because they're all old school ultimate reapers, they all went on a trip to France, to Nausicaa, a long time ago. And that, I believe, that coral came back with a guy called Pav.
I know the name Pav.
And Pav and Martin Lakin and all of them, they shared that coral. And that coral was, again, like my AAC hammerers. And I'm going to put a timeline on that bubble coral could be 25 to 30 years old.
Wow.
And I've got 2 pieces of that. Never sold what you gave me on
and
episode.
Laura's got a couple of pieces as well.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a fantastic hardy bubble coral,
Yeah. So I've got that, and I've still got some. So corals I've got from the first tank I tend to keep. So I'll probably, as long as I have a tank, I'll never get rid of them. Just got the emotional attachment.
Absolutely, yeah.
With those, and then
that's not me with Angela.
But...
Wait.
Anything to say, Ange? The camera's on you.
You can use hand signals, you just can't swear.
But we can. Right, we have a question here from quite a bit earlier on. So we've got a question from Liam. Question for Paul. What do you recommend for feeding NPS corals? Do they like meaty food residue from a broadcast feed, for example?
Well, that really depends on the species. I mean, so much is unknown about coral dietary requirements. In fact, even what we believe, even though that I sell a ton of coral foods, most of it is a relative guess down to particle size, really. So some species just depends. So, for example, if we were looking at a blueberry gorgonian, for example, which is one of the most difficult species of all, I've found that having live norpali, so newly hatched brine shrimp, in the water column is probably that, with a combination of something like reef roids, which is quite a lot. So these are quite large particles, really, is about what they need. But if we were discussing, for example, some of the, I wouldn't necessarily say that we should, I mean, I still experiment with carnation corals, the strawberry corals and things like that. They are very, very tricky. But some people say they take up phytoplankton cells, that size. But there's not too many corals that I believe that do utilise phytoplankton. So in terms of, I would always say that if you're keeping NPS corals, you've got a broadcast feed for sure. And you should provide with overall with a sort of various micron size food. So for me, I will use something along the lines of, say, oyster feast for that size. But then I actually make soups up, even though I distribute Reef Nutrition and I'm a big Reef Nutrition fan and sell it. Right, the reality is I do use Reef Nutrition, but I may also include live I also include TMC's gamma red plankton. Which is calinous, but it's a different, it's because it's frozen, it's quite a whole. So I would say that if you've got an NPS aquarium in general, now if we was to talk, for example, about sun corals, they can take really large meaty food. So I would use mysis shrimp for them, or brine shrimp. So you've got to look at the polyp, you've got to understand the, I refer to them as flowers. You've got to look at the flower and what the flower could eat. So as I said, it all comes down to particle size. These old organic compounds in the water, I think, are fundamental with NPS aquarium. And I know people keep seeing my tank online and what have you that I've got in the shop. The reality behind that tank is that a 50% water change is carried out every single week, and every single day is crop dusted with food. And I couldn't tell you specifically what the animals are specifically eating, apart from something the size of a blueberry gall pollet. I can see them capture things like norpoli, but certainly on some of the smaller pollet MPS gorgonians, it's very difficult to know. So I try and cover all bases. But if you
It's a wide range.
if you're going to try MPS corals, I think the most important thing is to be ready to roll your shirt sleeves up, because those types of aquariums are so demanding. You know, I've actually using, I wouldn't normally recommend, you wouldn't think to use a fleece filter in those situations. That's the one time I think they're really handy. If you are dosing foods daily, there's got to be something that gives. So it's almost like I'm a bit like my baby seahorses when I'm rearing them. You have to have millions of norpoli in the water, you know, for very few baby seahorses, just so that you don't miss that potential. So it's about crop dusting, I'm afraid, that one.
So do you feed once a day and then it's a 50% water change every week?
I'll be honest with you, on some days I might do 6 or 8 feeds a day.
Wow, that's nutrients going in.
Yeah, and in some days I might forget. So what I'm trying to say is that, you know, I'm trying to mimic the sea. Sometimes there's lot of plenty, and sometimes there's a different tide and it's not so plentiful.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to sort of, there's no real complete rule book on how to do it. It's a fine line. The best person, quite honestly, if anyone's seriously into MPS aquariums to contact, is a guy called Neil Rowland.
Yeah.
Neil Rowland has been playing at this now for years. I believe John Clipperton done an article on that in Ultramarine magazine, and I know Chris knows Neil Rowland well, but he inspired me. He kept asking me for MPS corals and going, well, you know, where am I going to put them? You know, so you know, and they don't sell fast, so I've actually set the aquarium up to look like a display. But that's also important. Lots of dealers that mess around with MPS corals, unless they fix them into position, they're not going to do well. They need fixing, like the gorgonians. I use a bit of super glue, even if it's for a 4-cell coral.
Yeah.
And I'll actually, so that way it can get its maximum flow rate that it needs. That's another really important. Flow rate is absolutely key when it comes to MPS.
So is that quite high flow?
Yes, for the majority.
So it then takes the nutrients around it, helps them to feed on.
For the majority of the species, I would say that's the case. But if you was going to start with MPS animals in general, probably the best one to start with is something like a feather duster worm. They're one of the more simplified animals that seem to cope quite well without any direct feeding. And if you've got a little bit of dedication, so in other words, if you've got a dog or a budgie, you know that needs feeding every day. Your sun coral ideally needs feeding every day, and they actually learn that response.
You can train them, can't you?
You can almost train them to go at the time that you want them to be open.
Yeah.
Masses of flows, particularly for sun corals. A lot of people go, oh, they're in caves, so they put them in the dark. But guess what? There's no flow there. So if you are going to put a sun coral in a cave, make sure the flow rate through that cave is appropriate.
Yep. I'll just start them. Jeremy, what's your experience with MPS?
Not very good, to be honest, but probably like a lot of people, you know, I mean, not many people do well with them. The only thing I would say is published an article recently on the Chinese method of growing MPS, and they heavily believed in newly hatched brine shrimp norpoli. So that's what they call because they're just swimming around as well as the flow keep them going. So yeah, that's what I read, but my experience with them not very good. You know, like a lot of people, I find them incredibly tricky.
I certainly wouldn't advocate that. There was no arm twisting at AAC to jump into an MPS aquarium. It's Neil Rowland that inspired me. I sort of understand what I'm in for. In fact, Angela actually was trying to put a lady off the other day for buying non-photosynthetic gulls for a sea aquarium. And I know the other members of staff had, you know, wherever we can, we try and tell people, don't buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just because I love them and it's part of the display at AAC doesn't mean that I'm advocating that people necessarily buy them. But without talking up Reef nutrition too much, because I don't want to sound like a salesman, if you look at the various micron sizes, there's a guy in America called Levi Peterson. Is that right, Jeremy? Levi
Yeah.
Peterson. And he's done particularly well with MPS corals. In fact, there's a group on Facebook that pings all day long when they're discussing them. Come off of it because it was just non-stop. But Levi is probably a good contact in the US, and I would say Neil Rowland is a good contact from Hertfordshire Reef Club in the UK.
Yeah, and Florian in Germany, Florian Godig.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful pink stem with white flowers on it. I think I've seen here before. And I'm really tempted to get anything. No, I'm not going to get that. Within 2 weeks, it's
that's a new species. That's a new species I've got, which I'm not sure exactly what it is. It was sold to me as a chili coral, but it's not a chili coral. It's very smooth in its appearance, Jeremy. It's not so bumpy and lumpy like a red chili coral with white flowers. This is a very smooth species. Looks like a sinularia in the soft coral world. But bright red, but it's got very fine white flowers that come out and seems to open regular as clockwork every morning. So
I think there's so much we don't know about MPS corals because they're not only circumtropical, they're temperate and cold water all across the globe and at various depths as well. I mean, we're not even at the tip of the iceberg, are we?
Let's be honest, though. Look, we should give credit to one man that was at our show, Coral Freaks, and that is Jamie Craig's. Just spawned some British cold water Gorgonians using oyster feast, I might add, right, in the UK. So it's not an impossibility, but Jamie is a special lad. So there we go.
Yeah.
Anything else from a news perspective?
Yeah, should we talk about these bandit angels? Because this is quite a big deal. Yeah. So a few weeks ago, I wrote that a Japanese breeder, a Japanese wholesaler, had bred bandit angels, and 1 or 2 were trickling through to America. There was a big hoo-ha about who had them, who didn't have them. Did they really exist? Were they really in America? And then it kind of fizzled out again because, again, like I said earlier, we're the UK. We don't get the same stuff as they do. Until today, when De Jong put their advert out saying that they've got tank-bred bandits. Now, my initial thought was they'd got them from this Japanese breeder because he's known for them. But then Joe Chambers, Paul's mate from Aquarium Composition, said that he saw bandits at De Jong the last time they were there. Is that right, Paul?
No, he didn't. It was Personatus.
So there was no breeding adults there.
Don't get me wrong. To see a Personatus angel in itself. Well, I do. No, hang on a minute. In terms of breeders, I do believe they did have a pair of breeders at De Jong. They did. I just didn't see juveniles, if that's what you mean. There was no juveniles available.
Yeah, no, I think he means adults. But I always, when I write about these breeding stories, I always try and read between the lines. And De Jong didn't specifically say we have bred these fish. They said we have these juveniles. So I think, well, we'll find out next week. But I think they're from the Japanese supplier.
I would have said they probably are. And in actual fact, De Jong every year at this time of year, because it's the time of year where the international trade community descends upon Holland, very often there's a little bit of willy waving that happens. Yeah, and this is why last year I was first time in all of my career lucky enough to see Geniacanthus personatus, the Mud Angel. And I know what they sell for these days, but the last time I heard about one for sale was about £32,000 for like a inch and a bit long fish. So in actual fact, I believe 2 of them did under license make their way to a private aquarium in the UK, of which I think I know the customer. So they're out there. But yeah, there's always at this time of year, it's a good time of year to go fish spotting in Holland.
Yeah. So we just need to figure out a way of getting them into the UK, because now we've left Europe. You used to just be able to order from De Jong and they'd get sent over by a.
Well, I was going to put one in your case from the way home next week, Jeremy.
Exactly.
No, we're not doing that. Yeah, no, we're definitely won't be doing that, or any corals, I might add.
No, so unfortunately, the import process now is going to be just as difficult as involved as getting a fish from.
Yeah,
you know,
well, I've looked into it, Jeremy. Basically, you have to have export. Obviously, it has to be signed off by the vet in Europe. You have to have export health certificates, and then it has to be passed through a border inspection post. And when me and my freight forwarding guy looked into it, each box would cost me a minimum of £400 before we got started.
Wow.
Right.
Very, very expensive.
It's a lot of Jaffa cakes.
I know.
It is. Any other news? I'm going to go back to the chat. If not, Jeremy.
No, you go to the chat, mate. Let's go to the
Brilliant.
chat.
So, I've got a comment here. Just had my APC overnight notification. Thanks for getting that PSU replacement sent so quickly, AAC team. My temporary return pump solution isn't pretty. Some good feedback. Excellent.
That's good.
I stopped for 8 years, and before I keep fish, Xenia.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Xenia actually looks lovely.
I love
corals.
when
there's
there's a lot of snobby stuff. Corals. You look, whatever suits you and suits your wallet and your economy. The problem is like Jeremy raised at Coral Freaks about Instagram.
Yeah.
Is you see all these amazing tanks all the time in your scroll and in your feed. It's enough to put you off. I believe this is something that's in the world of beauty as well. Girls seeing pictures of it. It's not real. The reality is that there is, that most of us out there have, oh, I've got dirty glass around the corner here now. So what I'm saying is that it's a bit, there's nothing wrong with a whole. I love pulse coral. You just got to put it in the right aquarium.
Yeah,
that's all.
Absolutely. Which you can say for any coral, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What's the most overrated corals and fish then?
The most overrated coral, from my perspective, would be torch corals.
Yeah.
Torch corals. The hobbyist has shot their own foot off.
Do you want to explain?
Well, because
ultimately get rid of them in the first unit.
Well, because I've had torch corals for all my career, and I'm probably handled gold torch corals under metal halides years ago, and used to call them brown torch corals. The advent of the torch coral craze really is ever since the advent of LED. Because the reality is most of these corals generally don't look that pretty under natural daylight, which is where they're growing and they're found. It's only because of LED we're seeing these rare pigmentations, and of course anything that says gold on it straight away means that it's going to, So for me, the most overrated, and also a lot of beginners as well. Again, they go on Instagram, they see beautiful euphilia dominant aquariums, and they choose, and they literally skint themselves out in our shop. And we try and educate people and say, look, you haven't got to try and keep up with the Joneses all the time. Enjoy the hobby for what you can afford.
And they're not always the easiest coral to look after.
They're not.
If they get stressed, you get jelly.
Where they're intensively farmed, where they're very intensively farmed out on the mariculture beds, they are very prone to pest-related issues straight away. Then we get all of the shipping issues, which in turn starts off all the brown jelly infection issues. And of course, in a world where you're not meant to be using antibiotics, of course you don't stand a chance. So, it's in terms of the most overrated coral, I would say it would be torch corals. In terms of the most overrated fish, well, that's quite a tricky one because I love all fish, ugly ones and pretty ones. I really think there is an overrated fish, quite honestly. No, I love a Bobonius Damphia.
I'd love to have one of those. They're really expensive, aren't they? They just look so different.
If we're talking about price, I would agree. But let me tell you, to collect Bobonius Damphias is no easy task. The guy that used to, I know there's a guy in the Philippines, I think Jerry might know this story as well. There was two Filipinos who used to go fishing for Ventralis Amphias and Bobonius Amphias. And one of them died on a collection, and then and that's why we didn't see any for years. One of the divers died during a collection, and there was so few of them coming out and from the region, I believe. So overrated by price, but not overrated by what they are. I can't really think of an overrated fish, really. Not really. Can you, Jeremy? What's an overrated?
I'm trying to think like fashion fish at the moment. I mean, what do all the kind of Instagrammer? If you got like a torch tank, what are you going to put in it? It's going to be something expensive, I guess.
Designer clowns.
Hate designer clowns.
mean, like, I sell a lot of designer clowns, and I encourage my breeder to breed me designer clowns. But the reality, I suppose, if we was going to give Dan an answer on that, I suppose designer clowns, because let's be honest, the natural beauty of a pair of common or percular clowns takes some beating, doesn't it? Let's be honest. So, there you go, Dan. We'll put in, if there was a room 101, it would be designer clowns. Yeah.
And
torch corals.
Yeah.
There we go. Paul has loads of torches in stock to come down.
I've got loads, one of them.
25% off.
25% off this weekend.
Right, let's go through some more comments, if I may. So I'm going to ask the question, just got mine under the edge near my feeding area. I can see them catching food. Just wondered if they were actually consuming or just predatory catching.
I presume that's a sun coral. Liam, I would specifically feed the sun coral at least 3 to 4 times a week. You can trigger them open using a bit of red plankton for a half an hour before. Wait until the flowers come out, and then specifically go in for pipette and feed as much of the polyps as you can.
Absolutely. Jay, sun coral, my blood red stole the myces from the polyps and it starved. Yeah, I've had a sun coral before, and if you've got a shrimp, that is a nightmare. And then put a cup over it to feed it. We should have done the most
overrated invertebrate. It would easily be the clean shrimp. Blood shrimp's less problematic. Boxer shrimps, no problem whatsoever. But cleaner shrimps are probably the most overrated invertebrate.
So why are they overrated?
Yeah. Well, because they're just a pain in the arse.
Oh, because they're a pain. Yeah. That's fair enough.
People think they clean the tank as well, and they don't. But people think they clean up the fruit.
Yes, yeah.
There we go. Tony's in.
Tony.
Afternoon, wherever you are.
Right, Tony.
Do a picture of his reef soon, aren't we?
Absolutely. I could definitely speak to Jamie for a long time with a million questions. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's just special, isn't he? Like, such a nice guy, but what he can do is it's amazing. Mind blowing.
Oh, you can ask that one. I'll see what you're looking at, Paul.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Jeremy, me and you had a discussion about this, didn't we? How much do we think a tank bred bandit would be? And I did look into this. I think it's going to be about £10,000 to £12,000, isn't it?
Right. So let's talk about what they used to be first, Paul. Juveniles and adults.
Right. So the rule with bandit angels is the bigger they are, the cheaper they were from wild. So then there's a very good reason for that. And that's because the bigger ones, which are, say, around about 10 to 15 centimetres, generally didn't do very well because they'd already started to get in a sponge fixed diet. So when I used to get them in at that size, they would put £1,700. That was when they were available. Okay, and there were quite a rare fish from Hawaii. That's the other thing. That's why we don't see that many, don't see wild ones. The smaller they are, the more desirable they are. And the last one I sold was £2,270.
And how long ago was that?
That would have been around about 7 years ago. 6 years ago was the last time I sold a bandit angel. And I think the new ones are going to be, he's just put a thing up there, Karen breeds in Hawaii. So there's a lady called Karen Britton, who was one of the most successful people who bred a Karen Britton, which I believe Tony knows. But I think it's about 12,000 quid it'll be, roughly. I saw the sort of trade-ish price. Oh, is that right, Jeremy? Roughly? We didn't mean you discuss it, or have I got that wrong? Was
it's just a real shame, though, isn't it, Paul? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Those numbers, it just makes them. They were almost obtainable. I mean, my local store, Bursco, at one point had 4 bandit angels in. You know, that was a few years ago, and they were available. You know, and a few of the high end customers had them, but not at that kind of money. That's when wives get involved and just go, no flipping way. Are you having
yeah.
You know, so.
Or husbands, Jeremy, in this very equal fish-keeping world now.
Of course. Yeah, so, it's just, I'm never going to have one now. Never.
No. Well, you never know. I mean, captive breeding does start like that. It's like conspiculatus now. We're seeing tank-bred conspics anywhere at the moment from between sort of $4,000 to say $6,000, and they're averaging in the UK at about £5,000. But I do believe that if you think that a wild was £1,700 when it was available, conspiculatus, my understanding is that we will see captive bred expensive angels drop back to their wild pricing as they learn the techniques more and more and more. But people have to understand that when you start investing, it's like me. I've done 40 grand on breeding seahorses roughly, with room changes and moving and things like that. and I reckon I've probably sold about £6,000 worth.
Yeah.
So it's a long-term thing. Yeah.
And with the captive breeding of these fish, competition is actually a good thing. I can't wait for more people to breed yellow tangs, because as soon as there's 4 or 5 places doing it all over the world, that's when it becomes a buyer's market and the price starts to drop.
Yeah, they will fall in price without a shadow of a doubt, particularly if we see the Hawaiian fish ban lifted. Then the captive ones will drop dramatically.
Yeah, although I'm worried about the price of the wild ones, because I know how expensive it's been to go through the courts and everything. That's
well, there's a $350,000 legal scientific report that needs paying for as well.
Wow.
Just to prove that the industry was viable.
So someone has to pay for that long term.
And that was shared between, I think, only a few people in the world. And I think one of them is TMC and the other one is Quality Marine Los Angeles, I think. And there's one other, I think, involved as well. So there's going to have to be at some point So when they come in, you give some 50,000 for sake of argument, they want to return on that, and you can understand. Yeah, they're going to need to regain their money. So as much as it's annoying for people when they see these captive bred fish prices that are so ridiculous, no one wants to sell something that's unobtainable, really. They want to make sure that they sell as many as possible. Yeah,
absolutely. Right, I've got a couple of questions for you, Paul. How is the seahorse breeding and distribution going, based on what you said about the cost? And
we've now moved to seahorses. The majority of the breeding was going on at home. I've now only got the adults at home at the moment. It's supposed to be quiet season. In other words, seahorses at this time of year tend to slow. Certainly the erector seahorse families, they tend to slow down. But it's going okay, actually. I mean, we've got, I showed you earlier on, we've got several hundred juveniles at the moment that are growing, but there is no rush to sell them on at the moment. I'm still experimenting, getting used to a new system. I need to be sure, but I think we'll probably see, I don't know, looking at it, probably about 150 go out into wholesale soon. So they'll be distributed around the UK as the last ones were. So about 150, 200 will probably make it to market soon. But there's been a few imports recently, so I've held off with the wholesale on that at the moment.
And what's the biggest challenge you've found?
Just time and feeding. Doesn't matter what you try and breed or what you try and do, it's the time involved with feeding. But that's why I moved it to AAC, where I've got a lot more people.
Yeah, because you were shooting home. It was a nightmare.
It was an absolute nightmare. I mean, I should really give Ange some credit here, because Ange shared all of this problem with me. I call it a problem.
Was you going home, Ange, and feeding?
No, well, I wasn't necessarily going home, but I was sharing the load a little bit.
Yeah, she was helping with sterilisation. There's a lot of cleaning. There's a lot of sterilisation that takes place. Yeah, I did. Ange said that when she joined the fish trade, she still was never going to clean the skimmer cup. And then around about a month ago, I got her on camera, and she. I was so busy doing so many things, I had to depend on it, and she did it. Yeah, she rolled her shirt.
Oh, there we go.
She wiped the stinky skimmer cup out.
That is, that's at the bottom, isn't it? And then the next question following from that is, how's the coal shipping scheme going? Any closer?
Well, we've still got a little bit of the Seahorse project to finish in this room now. And I'm pleased to say that these new coral systems, I'm starting to see some spots of coralline algae. ICPs are coming back good. I've put a few.
So you've got some testicles.
They're very expensive testicles.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they are glitter gonnies and
why did you choose glitter gonnies when you've got a whole range?
Well, if they live in anything,
oh, okay.
No. The reason being is because one system, I still love the hobby, and I went out shopping, didn't I? I went up north and I bought some corals up there, and then there was someone on eBay. I saw that I'm just the same as the rest of everyone. If I see a coral that I like, I will. If I see a coral that I like, I will do it. So. It's not back on. There we go. It should come back.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, so those corals have been moved in here. The systems are coming good. We've got Connor and myself have got to start going through the software and things like that on the website and how the layout's going to be and what have you for doing it. But yeah, I said spring 2025.
That's not far away.
At least me 3 months.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll start having something.
Excellent. Be good.
Yeah.
And if we do follow-up shows, and potentially we could set up a camera and you could do a tour of the seahorses and go through all of that and explain to everyone what's involved.
Of course,
it's a fantastic system.
That would be good. I'd enjoy that.
So, yeah. Right, I'm just going to go through some comments because we've overrun, Paul.
Have we?
Compared to what we said. We said hour and a half or an hour and 3/4, and we've got to let our guests go.
Yes.
Right, so just going to whiz through the comments. Goniaporas are my favourite coral. Tank grown torches do better for me instead of imported ones, seem to survive better.
They've got to come from somewhere in the first place. You have to remember that. Yeah.
Favourite fish, Bangai cardinals, especially a breeding pair. Absolutely.
I like a Bangai.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bred them in one of the tanks just by accident. It was brilliant. I've still got one of the juveniles 5 years later. Probably the best feeling I've had in the hobby, seeing the juveniles swim around. Black Tang.
Love a black Tang.
And me.
No, they're lost on me. I think there's other Tangs better than the Black Tang.
Well, I don't know. I do like that.
No.
What do you think, audience? Black Tang?
Are they jet black?
Yeah,
like
the black long nose, the proper jet black one. Like I've got in there. What about my display?
And the adults get a really long nose.
Yeah. What do you reckon? You like them?
In a full mixed reef, you're going to see you don't see many black fish, do you? So once it's got decent background behind it, but in a smaller tank.
I'd rather have a yellow Tang than a black Tang.
No.
Only the dip pings.
I like the price.
They've always been expensive.
Worse.
They've always been expensive. I mean, they used to be, when I started the hobby, about £700-800, if I remember right.
Yeah, they were.
Years and years ago.
Well, actually,
they're quite rare.
A juvenile used to be, that's because, again, we can't get free fish through Hawaii.
How much are they now?
Well, they were, they started off as a juvenile at £400 20 years ago, and then went up to about 900, 700 to 900, as Paul says, and now we're at about 2,000 plus on a black Tang. But once we got this Hawaii door open, we'll see cheap black Tangs again.
The supply comes in and
because they don't come from Hawaii, but they travel through Hawaii to us.
Right, okay.
They don't seem to be captive bred though, Paul. Black Tangs. We've seen purples, yellows, hybrids.
Yeah.
Just not targeting.
Interesting. They're found quite solitary where they're found. They're not often found in large groups.
Maybe that's why. Okay, let's move along. Fin clown and vomit. Royal grammar. It's mixed. I love a royal grammar.
He says overrated.
Overrated.
That might be overrated. Yeah,
I think they're great. I mean, some people have a lot of problems with aggression.
Yeah.
Touch wood, I've had
well, no, royal grammars, it might be Tony saying, well, why is it overrated? Probably because it's often rated as a beginner species, but actually they're one of the most Udinium prone species.
Oh, really?
So yeah, they're actually they're not so
lucky.
They can be, they're handled. They're not a lot of Caribbean fish are dirty fish, I call them. You know, they're not very well handled.
Okay. Cleaner strips known to reduce cortisol levels in fish, I believe. Go through, we're nearly at the end. Any views on that?
I've never given it any thought.
If there's a paper to support it, I'm sure it'll be certain species which are known to find the cleaners to get cleaned. Then presumably, if they're covered in parasites,
probably Moorish, probably not Moorish. I was probably more eels, species like that.
Yeah, which look pretty angry.
Are there any UK breeders?
No, not at this moment in time. That would be a good thing.
Are they quite rare clams?
No, clams are not necessarily rare. They're obviously on the endangered species list, as a lot of species are, but they're all oceanic, land-based, but oceanic fed. But they're bred in huge numbers. Yeah. But there are no, I believe there are no domestic people giving it a go. Maybe that one be for Rob, pelagic swimmer. Have a go at clams as well, Rob, while you're breeding coral.
He's got time in his
Yeah,
hand, hasn't he?
he's got time.
He's
He
got the
can do
room
that.
of a
Yeah.
tank. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Right, I'm just going to skim through some of these and then we'll call it a day. There we go. Have you thought about keeping or thought about breeding leafy sea dragons?
I'm going to use David's words. I don't like the price because they're about £10,000 upwards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and at the moment I'm only learning.
Yeah.
Every day is a school day, as I always say, but I'm still only learning just about to breed seals properly.
Absolutely. So I've got a question there. Not a question, a statement. Testicles. I thought you said testicles.
He did. He loves testicles.
What corals did you get on your northern adventure, Paul?
Well, I found a very nice sticky thing.
Okay,
All
can
right.
you elaborate on that one? Or
Right,
maybe
there
not.
was
Let's see where
quite
this is going.
a rare thin branched aquapora that I come across, or if I use Jamie's words, acropora. Yeah, that I've found in Wolf Aquatics, which was hiding underneath in their sump area. And I went, oh, what's that then? And I had to split it with a power I was with as well up there as well. So I've snapped it in half, and he's got a bit, I've got a bit. It's looking a bit ropey at the minute, but I'm hoping it. I think it's going to have some rainbow pigmentation to it and whatever. And I did also found some beautiful amaze balls gollies on my travels.
Nice.
Yeah.
David's face, look, he's perked up like a meerkat.
Yeah.
He's taking one for coming in this evening.
Yeah. Be careful if he was around the weekend. But he's not around the weekend.
Yeah.
Got some love there for Flange Appreciation Society. Well done, Flange. Right, okay.
They're always flirt with it.
I know.
It's hard to call them, isn't it?
Right. I have a question. A question may sound daft. How do clams and enemies mix? I have both, but I'm worried about the clam getting stung. That's even a thing that happens.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's on the species. I would have thought like a carpet anemone would probably have a go at eating anything. I had one eat a copperband butterfly once, no problem, you know. But it depends on the species and what. But clams are pretty resistant to stings.
Oh.
Yeah, so very often you'll find clams nestled amongst lots of corals, galaxia, and species that they somehow. I mean, Chris actually. His tank, he had, which I've got in my display tank. He had a massive Doracer clam,
Yeah,
and his tank was packed with corals around it, wasn't it? Rob's got it now, is he? Yeah.
He accused me of killing half his clams with it.
Really? What, from viruses or bacterial problems? There is some funny stuff with clams. But I believe
I've
that
seen
clams
it, yeah.
can take viruses, certainly crossing locations as well. So you know, if you have like clams from Palau and then you put in a Vietnamese, not you see them anymore, Vietnamese squamosa with it, there's something about mixing clams which can be a bit iffy. I have to be very careful. I will not put Pacific clams, some of the ones that come out, of French Polynesia with some of the other Pacific clams. So there is something in that. I know Polo Reef was recently with his vet looking into the bacterial or viral issues with clams. It's a real. No one really knows.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to study at the moment.
I've seen a couple of posts of people bringing in clams from other tanks, and as you say, maybe from cross regions.
I know Tom actually. Tom mentioned to me because I had a couple of nice blue Aussie squamosa saved for him. But I think Tom's just recently told me
he had a problem with one. I think he bought one in and it killed one of his other clams.
It can happen.
Yeah.
I've seen it happen. Yeah.
Right. So we've got some comments there about what fish. So Rob's not a big fan of black tangs, Achilles, and blueface for me.
Nice.
I'm boring. Like Tamini tangs.
Nothing wrong with a Tamini. The best tang for 90% of the reef keepers that come to AAC, because it doesn't get too big. You know, a good size one's only up to about 8 to 9 centimeters.
Yeah.
So it's the #1 choice. Better than most Zebrasoma. Fantastic cleaner. Will eat diatoms and things like that. So for me, the Tamini's the #1 tang, really, in a way.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. Well, I've got one more question,
Yeah.
and then we're going to rattle through the rest of the comments, and then we will go. So, have you tried mollies?
They're good. I have. They're good cleaners, but I'll tell you a funny story. So I know they're really good for algae control. I once thought, you know what, I'm going to try that. So I went down the road to my local freshwater store I know very well and get on really famously with. And he gave me, I went in there to buy them, and he gave me a big bag of his own tank bred black mollies he'd done himself. And they were stunning. I killed them within about a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do well. I think I rushed the acclimation from fresh to salt too quick. So.
There we go. So yeah, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
He has tried them.
I've tried them.
I don't know if that's aimed at me, because I've had a red glitter from Stefan. If you're asking me, then yes, I've still got it. It's a lovely Gonia
I've got it.
Oh, you've got it.
Yeah.
That's you, is that?
I've got one as well.
Oh, yeah. Very nice.
Yeah. He must have seen me coming. He knows it, Stefan. I nagged him to.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was going to actually. I was going to get to a point. I was going to get hold of him, chuck him in the cupboard, and lock the door until he let me have one. But in the end,
I think it's you. I've got a red, but I don't think it's better.
I've got a red off of Stefan. They're pretty hard to come by there.
Is it overrated?
That's the one on Tang theme podcast I did when I was over there, and he was going about glitter gonnies, and then I came home and I saw Stefan have one that I've just nagged him to death for it ever since.
Yeah.
So
Jeremy, do you think a glitter gonny, is it overrated?
That's pretty
overrated. Honestly, they do nothing for me. The Aussies message me every few days saying, "Hey, Jeremy, do you want to write about this one in Reef Builders?" I'm like, nah, not interested.
They are a little bit expensive for what they are.
Yeah, I like them. I do like Gonia Boron. Right, can't beat a jewel.
True, but we're not going to see one of them, Lee, unfortunately, because of the Hawaii ban again. It's another stupid fish that we don't. Sorry, not a stupid fish. Another stupid reason Hawaii ban. We don't. A great fish.
Yeah,
but they're not even coming back if it's lifted.
No, that's
really?
right. Yeah,
they're not on the list.
Yeah.
Thanks for the stream to Paul and everyone. It's been super helpful. Thank you for watching. Yes. Chris killed my two 6-year-old clams. Oh dear.
The guilt was real.
Just rub it in a little bit, Rob.
He posted a video. I was just like, oh God, no, don't.
Oh, no.
I was having nightmares. It was going to kill everything.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Maybe it was just where he put them, Chris, or saying, just, I don't know, they spewed their smell into the water and it drifted into his one. I don't know.
It took some wrestling to get it out because it was massive.
Right.
Clams are being bred in Australia.
Yeah, that's got some at the moment.
Not my fault before you start, Tom. I think that was a clam that went from Liam into Tom's tank. Powder blue is my guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, they're beautiful. An adult with strong colour, unbeatable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm an AAC Tamini in both tanks. Can I have an amazeball gonny in the DD tank yet?
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, that all depends on nutrient levels. I'll be very careful when it comes to nutrient levels and light levels. I'm only learning, like I said, and I find that they're very easy to bleach out, and you've got to be really careful. Gonnies are funny. Once you get them right, they're good to go. But as I said, they're not. You know, I would go steady if it's a new system.
Yeah. Since I've moved mine into higher flow, they seem to love it. The polyps seem to not getting absolutely battered, but I've found better flow.
Sometimes it's difficult. I'm trying. I think rhythmic flow is more important to kind of pour than high flow.
Yeah. Fair point. Right, got two or three more comments, and then we are done. The one on band was very dear. When is March dropping in? That's a TBC, isn't it?
He means March.
Oh, is that merch on March?
I think he means March. I think he means March because that is March's pal who introduced me to March. That is Paul K. And we were only discussing this earlier on. We might talk to him. But if we do get March from Fragbox on here, what's going to happen? We're going to get a strike on YouTube after his special words and songs that he does.
He won't have a new song. He'll just have a remix.
I know. So, if we do bring March in, we need a bleeper button. But every time,
I just leave him on mute.
Leave him on mute. That'd be so fun.
And don't tell him, but just nod and laugh.
Yeah.
Right, I think we're there. So excellent stream, guys, and great idea to have a live audience as well. Look forward to the next one. I've started with Alveopora. Absolutely, I started with Alveopora. I think they're underrated corals.
Absolutely.
I think they're hardier than Goniopora in my experience. I think they're superb looking ones. So I'd say someone go for those. Do like them. There we go. Do you have any frags of the one in the DD tank pool?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
No skimmer, no roller frost, no carbon. That's the Goniopora trick.
Stefan Bates, he's the Goniopora
got
king
loads, hasn't he?
next to Laura as
Yeah.
well. But that's definitely, there's something about that for certain in those words there.
Right, I think we are done, Paul.
Yeah.
You want to say a few thank yous?
Yeah, thank you very much for our live audience. Just to say as well that if anyone fancies the idea at all, to get in touch with either Paul L or Paul H. For a, you know, we've not made any decisions about doing another one. If you love it, then maybe comment on the download or whatever,
Yeah.
and then we'll consider another one. But thank you very much to our live audience,
Thank you.
David. Chris and Dan, and it was good.
It was. I enjoyed
I
it.
didn't think it was
good.
I was worried.
Blown two hours.
Worked
It wasn't
right.
supposed to be 2 hours.
Yeah,
So apologies
very
for we
much.
said
Yeah.
90 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeremy, also for joining
Yeah,
us, pal,
absolutely.
and thank
Always
you
a
again
pleasure.
for Coral Freaks. The audience do get free beer.
They've been drinking.
They get free beer and free pizza.
Absolutely. And on that note, we will say goodbye. So
Bye.
See you
Bye.
later. Bye bye.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
bye bye.